And then he come back in and was like, okay, while my colleague's out there, can I take a statement? Yes, you can. Do you want to press charges? Yes, I do. Give him the statement. I said to him, what's going to happen now? Right, so we're going to go back. My sergeant will probably interrogate him, and then he'll more than likely be released on bail. Can we bail him back here? I'm sorry, mate. He's just attacked me. Why do I want him back here? The day the domestic violence protection order was granted, I remember, was the 9th of February. That same night...
This year now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That
same night, that man was outside of the back garden watching me and the kids through the window. That was it. Like, my mind was blown then, because now I've got kids waking up, Mum, we're hungry, Mum, we're hungry. And then kids realising, the older ones are realising, hold on a minute, we've got no electric, we've got no hot water. So they're starting to panic. And then because they're starting to panic, the little ones are starting to get stressed. And then before I knew it, I've got a household of children all in tears and just clinging to me. Mum, what are we going to do, what are we going to do? Mum, we're scared, Mum, we're scared, what are we going to do? Right. I didn't know what to do. That meeting, they told me, yes, that's not a problem, we can do that, but we can't house you. So I was like, well, you're basically telling me you can take my kids and put a roof over their heads, but not me. That's not going to happen. We have to be housed together. And then, because it was summertime, we didn't quite know what was wrong with the house until the winter time. And that's when all the uglies started showing up. Like, we had slugs. We'd wake up in the morning because, like, we couldn't sleep in the back, couldn't put the kids in the back bedroom. There's a little box room at the back.
So the damp coming down the wall, was that?
There was a bloody hole in the ceiling.
Yeah.
And there was damage to the roof. So when it rained, it was literally just pouring through the hole into the bedroom. And it was like, the whole time there was just like, I cry every night because you imagine I've got to get up 7 o'clock. Me and the kids are out from like 7 in the morning so I can get them to school on time. Their school, we're in Hightown, their school's how many miles away in Lucy Farm. So we're having to leave out 7, get to the bus station, get the bus off to school. We're leaving out in the morning. My children are seeing prostitutes doing business right there in the open. First thing in the morning, like live on their face, and they're looking at me like, Mum, what's that woman doing? Mum, what's that man doing? And like, how do you answer your children? What do you say to your children when you're seeing things like that? Like, you don't want them to know anything about that, so you don't really want to answer them, but then at the same time, you don't want your children who are already traumatised enough to feel like, oh, Mum don't care, she's just ignoring me. Like, what do you do? So they were seeing that every day, going to school and coming home from school.
You'll probably notice straight away that this is not a typical video that I do on this channel. I have always been reluctant to film people I've worked with over the years because I've seen charities exploit vulnerable people, you know, tug at heartstrings to get funding, whatever else from members of the public. And in doing so, charities often basically put forward the idea that, you know, these people are completely useless and without our expertise and kind of saving mentality, they would not be able to tie their own shoelaces. And that is wholly damaging to homelessness in general because it perpetuates this idea that homeless people are the reason that they're homeless. I think, as you'll see with Yoni, I'm not quite sure what else she could have done in this situation. There was a lot the Bedford Borough Council could have done, but I'm not quite sure what else she could have done in the circumstances over these years. I can only take my hat off to her as to how she's still standing. And the reason we're putting the video out at the moment is we've been trying to get her up to band A on the housing register, because within the housing register policy it basically talks about people who have been kind of subject to exceptional circumstances, and I would describe her journey through Bedford's homelessness services as exceptional. If it's not exceptional, the council need to know this, the councillors, the housing committee need to know this, because it is astonishingly bad. I can't imagine any right-minded person would not be astonished by how difficult life has been made for her in terms of moving around different towns, different addresses, no real settled accommodation at all, youngest kids knowing nothing other than temporary accommodation, school's been massively disrupted, all of those kind of things. If this is not exceptional, then the councillors need to wake up to that fact. And I welcome the conversations that have been had in the housing committee of late. There's an honesty there which has not been there before, and I commend that. And Leonie has been gatekept by Bedford Borough Council along this journey, but that's really almost the least of her worries. That's the one thing I could probably, well, I was able to do something about. The quality of TA, the other things that have been going on for her are things which, you know, it's one of the cases which I, you know, left just us with it being unfinished business, really. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that the council can have another look at this situation and form a view about whether they consider it to be exceptional and therefore whether she's warranted to go up to Band A. And there's also some current issues with the temporary accommodation. I would speculate that none of the council officers inspected that property before they placed the family there. There's damp on the walls, you know, you can feel it's physically wet, feels wet. The roof is, you'll see it kind of visibly bowed, both the kind of main roof and down the back on the annex. It could be a nice property if it had got a landlord who was looking after it, but they don't appear to. And my guess is because there's some structural issues, it seems to me, they don't know what else to do with it, so they're basically just shipping it out as TA. I cannot imagine that this property that they're currently in would be able to be kind of put on the private rented market because of the condition it's in. There's other issues with it as well, but you know, you'll see from the photos and the video that I put in a bit later on that that's the case. So yeah, that's why we're doing it. And I guess another question for the councillors will be, how much money do they think the council has spent on supporting the family in TA, and how could they have basically responded differently back in 2016, 2017 to actually avert a lot of this cost on the council, on the taxpayer? So yeah, I guess there's a lot going on, but I'll leave it to Leonie to explain it. Just to say, I have found her to be credible throughout. I found her memory to be reliable. I've seen her records. There are some records actually which appear to be missing. So there's some potentially some advice she got from Children's Services in Bedford that they would remove the children from her care because she was homeless, which is not lawful. We're going to pursue that and see if there is a minute in meeting about that where that was said. I've seen it in other councils and it's not unusual. Shelter did a campaign about it a few years ago, so it would not surprise me at all if that's what was said. But as I say, that would be unlawful. And just to give a little bit of legal context to it as well, the benefit cap kicked in for Leonie back in, I think, 2016. She'll tell it. She's better with the dates than I am. But back in 2016, the benefit cap kicked in. Her father passed away during this period as well, which didn't make it easy, and she also had some health issues going on as well. So there's a whole bunch of things that happened that were outside of her control that made life more difficult. But essentially, the reason she lost her settled accommodation was that she didn't keep up with the payment scheme that she set up when it went to court. And that's because the information I think the council had at the time was inaccurate, to put it mildly. But effectively, she was expected to put all of her child tax credits onto the rent, effectively housing costs, and then to feed, clothe, heat her home, all that sort of stuff, with the remaining £150 or so a fortnight and child benefit. I don't know how much you got from child benefit, but it was not a lot. When you run those figures through the affordability stuff, I'm pretty sure it's clear that it was not realistic to be able to afford it. Therefore, it was not reasonable to continue to occupy that accommodation. Therefore, she was not intentionally homeless. And that, in one sense, that minded to letter, I've not even seen if there was a Section 184 issue, which might be another issue, but the minded to letter that she got, that one sentence which basically says, I've carefully considered your circumstances and concluded that you are intentionally homeless, has done untold damage to this family's life and kind of growth and the ability to thrive. You'll notice that Leonie's kind of worked throughout kind of the times that she was healthy enough to do so. So she's not in any way, I don't think, can be considered to be a layabout or anything. She's very capable, in my opinion. As I said, I don't know how she's kind of held all these things together. She's very resilient. And if this is how families are treated by Bedford Borough Council, there are some, much bigger questions to be asked, I guess. So yeah, I'll let Leonie explain the situation.
June 2016. We had got a phone call, all of us in the family, to make it to L&D as soon as we could. My dad was in hospital. Basically passed away that day, my dad. We'd all been with him and watched him take his last breaths. It was quite traumatic for all of us. But that night we got home, me and the children, to find a notice of eviction on the doorstep from BPHA. So obviously that was a Friday and it was late at night. Waited till the Monday, contacted them, and what they had to tell me was basically the benefit cap had been applied to my claim back in March 2016, and because no rent had been paid since then, they were evicting us. So I wasn't aware of any of this, or I didn't even know a benefit cap had been applied to my claim. I mean, obviously the whole country knew that the government would bring in this whole benefit cap system, but I hadn't received any letters, any emails, anything from anybody to say that it'd been applied to my claim. So I'm just thinking rent's being paid as normal via housing benefit. So obviously that's the situation now. So whatever BPHA and the council were telling me to do to try and save the house is what I was doing.
So they were telling you things like apply for a DHP and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so I'd applied for, at the time I was only in receipt of income support because my child tax credit had been stopped. So that was like roughly 150 every fortnight. I'd been advised to apply for DHP, yeah. So I applied for DHP and I was told that I was basically refused it on the grounds that I had enough income, which is just crazy because...
And potentially they might not, the person who made the decision about the DHP might not have been aware that you weren't getting child tax credits, right?
Yeah. So I'm figuring, there's nothing else makes sense otherwise.
Yeah.
So I'd applied for DHP twice at the advice of the council and BPHA, and both times I'd been refused. And during this period I was still only in receipt of income support. So yeah, so whatever they were telling me to do, I was basically jumping through all the hoops. When I'd gone to court, I'm pretty sure it was December 2016 when I'd gone to court, because I remember going to court twice in the same month. The first time I'd got down there only for them to tell me that, oh no, we've postponed until blah blah date. So, which I felt was really unfair because I was heavily pregnant and pregnancy was rough and they were aware of it. But anyway, it was quite stressful actually, I'm not gonna lie, because I was suffering with pelvic girdle syndrome. I think they call it something else now, but it was really quite excruciating pain, just to walk was painful. So anyway, gone back to court a second time in December, presented my paperwork to the judge. At the time I had been under the advice, or Rebecca Lawrence had been the advisor that I'd first been presented to with at the desk in the office of Bedford Borough Council. Yeah. So she was the person assigned to me, I'm assuming. So she had filled out my income and expenditure for court against my wishes, and now I'm given her specific instructions. No, I can do it myself. And she'd gone ahead and she'd put in what my child tax credit would be should I have been in receipt of it at the time, but I wasn't receiving it at the time. So what she'd given the judge in effect was misleading and false, because I wasn't actually in receipt of that income.
If I remember right, did she kind of have that conversation with you as you were about to go into court? Like, there wasn't any...
Yeah, I mean, I'd had this conversation with her actually in the council offices when I'd visited her at the desk. I think it was a couple of days previous to that, and I'd said to her, no, it's fine, I can do the income and expenditure. And then the day I got to court, that day, she'd already done it, and I told her, like, no, you can't, like, you've got to, like, take that out, because then he's going to think I can afford to make the payments, and I can't, because this is all I've got coming in. And she was like, well, no, he'll see that you've got these two incomes coming in, so you are in a position, so we can save the house, it will save you from being evicted, blah blah blah.
So I would speculate, again, just trying to speculate why that would be. I would say potentially the job at that point is to try and get the judge to not evict you there and then. So she's got this incentive to basically present some information which gives the judge reason to think you can pay it back.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what her long-term plan was, but I think that would explain why that happened.
And that's what I kind of think she was doing as well. But like, and I even said to her on the day, like, no, you know, because then I'm stuck with having to pay this, whatever he says I have to pay, and I don't have it. So then I've just, like, you know, just sunk my own ship by doing that. Like, not. So anyway, we've gone into court, and that's exactly what's happened. The judge has turned around and said, well, Miss Clark, from your income and expenditure, you have enough income to be able to make your full rent payments plus the arrears on top and afford your monthly outgoings. So that was that. I didn't get my child tax credit until February 2017 they reinstated my tax credits. So going back to December in court, the judge had said basically that I have to pay my full rent, my rent in full, plus the arrears on top, which totaled £960 every 4 weeks or month, whatever. So in February 2017, when tax credits have reinstated at exactly that, £960 every fortnight.
So at that point, so you get...
Every 4 weeks, sorry.
So you get £960 every 4 weeks from tax credits, which effectively has to go immediately on the rent, and then you're living off 140, 150 income support, something like that, yeah?
Yeah.
And you've got, at this point, you've got 6 kids with you?
Yeah.
Because you've got a baby, okay.
6 kids and a baby on the way.
Yeah, okay.
So...
Okay. And I guess I mean, obviously for the councillors who are going to watch this, you basically weren't able to keep up with the payments, but from a legal point of view during this period there was no way you can afford you to pay that amount of money and also pay for your food and your kind of utilities and stuff like that.
No, it was impossible. It literally was impossible, and I done my very best, because all I was thinking was I need, my children need to have stability. They need a roof over their heads, and where we were in Wootton, everybody was settled, everyone was comfortable, and we were moving forwards and upwards as a family, which is, what everybody strives for. So my thing was, okay, you've asked me to pay this, it means my children and we're all going to go without, but if it means it saves our home, then okay, have it. So every month from February onwards I was sending that. I mean, I'd been given a specific card by BPHA that was like the rent and arrears account that all this money had to be paid into each month. So that's what I was using to make the payments every month, and I have my bank statements to show that as well. So yes, there were a few months where I simply was just like, I can't, my children need shoes, or one kid might need school shoes, another one might need new shirts, or might have ripped out his trousers, or children. That was it really. Basically everything else was donations from within the community, food bank, church, where friends and family could help. Otherwise every penny I had was going straight to make those arrear payments. So fast forward.
I was just going to say, so what point did you contact Councillor Wheeler? Would that have been in this period, or would it have been before?
Yeah, so that's around about the time, because obviously because I made connections within the community. Because if you imagine, it was a brand new development and everybody had moved in more or less the same time over the summer, so we'd all got familiar with ourselves, with each other, and and our children have as well. So it was a community, so I'd reached out to the community, and obviously some members of the community quite well acquainted, so knew what was going on, had reached out to other members, and that's how I got in contact with Councillor Wheeler, who was, I mean, of all the councillors that I've contacted over the nearly 8 years, Councillor Wheeler, and there's one other councillor in Luton, they were the only two so far that gave me any kind of comfort or any kind of reassurance that they actually understand and that I'm human, that we're human. Everybody else is we were just figures, we were just data on paper to them. But the Councillor Wheeler was just,
So you might not be aware of it, so behind the scenes he'd emailed the council, there were some emails between senior officers, and then a senior officer got back and basically said to Councillor Wheeler, there's nothing else the council can do, you're only likely to be intentionally homeless, which legally is not the case. And I think that, so essentially I think he got that information back, and he probably kind of thought, well, okay, there's nothing else I can do, but I think there's that kind of, I mean, you can see this kind of paper trail in the emails going back, and as I say, he was given the impression that there was nothing else the council can do.
Right.
Even though the council absolutely could have cleared the arrears if they wanted to, I would argue it was in their interest, and they had a...
Well, I know that because there was a lady that lived next door to us in Wootton, exactly the same place. Again, I think she had 6 children as well, and she was threatened with eviction by BPHA, same reason, but they awarded her the discretionary to clear the arrears, and that's what I was asking for at the time, but I was refused twice, and I was it was like, why And there was another family on the estate, on the development, that had gone through a similar thing, and they'd been awarded discretionary, and it was like, well, why have they been awarded discretionary and their rent arrears being cleared and I haven't? And it's like, I didn't understand.
And so your housing officer then becomes who
Yeah.
writes a letter which is minded to find you intentionally homeless. And again, and I'm guessing there's kind of a short space of like, so you were evicted in November, is that right?
November, yeah, 2017.
Yeah. So that's when you had to leave,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had that letter. I mean, okay.
So the main reason Lucy found me because she actually did find me intentionally homeless, and that was it. We had no help. Was, I think, mainly because we left the property, the TA property that they'd sent us to on the 3rd of November when they evicted us, which we couldn't stay in. And even the council later on had to send the pest control guy or whoever to come in and fumigate the whole place, because the house was riddled with lice and mites. Like, we had to throw away all our clothing. We came out of there covered in bites. So with the last little bit of money that I had at that moment, I just booked us into a hotel, and that's where we stayed for, I think it was like 3 or 4 days until my money ran out. And then it was like, I don't know what we're going to do now, kids, because Bedford had already said, well, if you're not staying in the property, you've made yourself intentionally homeless, and that was that. So it was like, what do we do?
So I'm sure the answer is yes. Did you tell the council about the bites you were getting?
Oh yeah, I told them on the very day.
Yeah.
It was her name, Lucy Quantick.
Yeah.
That very day.
So, and did they tell you that Children's Services would be able to help you out with housing potentially in Bedford?
Oh my God, Children's Services, please don't, because Bedford Children's Services twice. I was told by the council that because we're homeless, I have to go and have a meeting with Children's Services and make them aware of our situation. So I did that. Children's Services, I asked them, no, how can you help us? Because like, I've got a baby, you know, like, and young children, like, I need a roof over my children's heads. That meeting, they told me, yes, that's not a problem, we can do that, but we can't house you. So I was like, well, you're basically telling me you can take my kids and put a roof over their heads, but not me. That's not going to happen. We have to be housed together. So I walked out of the meeting and left them to it.
So when we requested your records, they didn't give you the minutes of that meeting. What they told you there was illegal. Might be worth specifying that. So because basically it's not true. They can't.
They've told me this twice, and Luton told me the same.
Yeah, it's illegal. Yeah, they can't do it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm sorry to break that to you there.
That had me in pieces, in an absolute panic, because I thought they were going to come and take my children from me, because all they kept on saying was, well, you're homeless, so you have no way of providing a roof over your children's head, which I forget the word they used, but basically saying that I'm in no position to take care of my children, so they'd have to do it. Right. And that had me in a panic, complete blind panic, because I'm thinking, oh my God, you're going to come take my kids from me. And Bedford had told me this twice, and then later on down the line, Luton told me the same thing.
So around this time, was that when you approached Luton and got put in temporary accommodation there?
No, what happened was I had spoke my sister, because obviously family are aware of the situation, so my sister, bless her, she was only in a 2-bed and she's got 5 boys. She was like, look, just come and stay with us. So we went and stayed with my sister. The older ones, so yeah, let me just go back a little bit. So when we were evicted from Wootton, the house that the council had given us was only big enough for me and maybe 3 little ones. So my bigger children, I had to ship out X, Y and Z. So we went to my sister's, it was literally just me, my 5-year-old at the time, my 2-year-old and my 1-year-old. And she's 20 now, but I think she was like 13 at the time. The other 3, the older 3, one was with my mum, actually 2 was with my mum, and one was in a hostel, 1 was with my mum and 1 was with my auntie. And so we stayed with my sister. We went and stayed with my sister like towards the end, like 3rd week of November I think it was. We were just floating around, like staying wherever, and up until then, after the money ran out. And then went and stayed with my sister towards the end of November. We were with her until January 2018, where I found a private rent property in Caddington, Luton.
When did I first meet? Was it 2018 or 2019?
It was later on in 2018.
Okay, right,
yeah.
Okay, cool, yeah.
So I was working at the time, so that's why I was looking for private rent. So I found this private rent, paid the deposit and everything, and me and the kids moved in there in January 2018. But again, that house was just...
Yeah. So, because I remember there was issues around, I think it made me show me photos of like some stuff that was going on outside of the property. And like,
we had a garage that was completely collapsing into the back garden.
Yeah.
And then again, it was a house that had been used as a grow, and the roof was, they'd left everything up in the loft, and the ceilings were bowing, the roof was naffed, and in the house itself there was so many problems with it. We had open sewage pipes in that house that the landlord refused to eat. Do you know what he done? He got a big 3-litre vodka bottle and stuck it and said that was good enough.
So you're working this one because I'm just thinking the benefit cap is always good.
I still had the benefit cap applied to my claim.
Yeah, okay.
Which was screwing me up left, right and centre, because it was making it so hard. And at the time I was trying to, because obviously the council put me in debt now, so I was trying to clear my debts at the same time. So I'd, not knowing any different, gone into an IVA, thinking okay, it's the best way to do it, but not realising when you're in an IVA, that's you blacklisted for like 6 years or longer, even if you clear it. So it was a problem for me trying to find places to rent.
Yeah.
And this is why we ended up with, excuse my language, but the shit properties, because they were the only landlords willing to accept anybody with bad credit or on housing benefit, which really messed us up. And it just, you know, you see now it's gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, Caddington 2018, and so there were so many things wrong with the property. It literally took me and my mum 4 days to clean that house. It was that filthy. When I started flagging up repairs, the landlord started getting really, really disgruntled, and he was really quite intimidating. And it really, like every landlord I've had so far over these 7 years have been male landlords, and they've all been intimidating, like got up in my face and heavy-handed, kind of like aggressive and everything. Like, but anyway, this landlord, what he did, because he would refuse to do the repairs, so I'd contacted, I think Central Beds was the ward of that area, so I'd contacted Central Beds, and they sent out their private inspector that inspects the private households.
Yeah.
So he'd come out and he was like straight away, yeah, everything you said, yeah, I can see, like, yeah, 100%. And yeah, we're gonna have to send him to court. So he ended up, the landlord had to go to court because they'd fined him, I think it was something like 70 grand. He'd gone to court and the judge had said, like, you got this much to pay. He decided he was gonna evict us, so he evicted me from the house, so which meant we had nowhere again. So then we went back to my sister's, and then you can imagine, like, it's a 2-bedroom house. She's got 5 boys, I've got 4 kids with me. It just, yeah, everything spilled out. We got into arguments and stuff, and we left. So we spent like a week in hotel after that, and then I just couldn't afford it anymore, and just went to Luton Borough Council, who were just as bad as Bedford, if I'm honest. Actually, you know what, in some respects worse, because they threatened, they called security on me, they called police on me to get me out of there, me and the kids out of their offices. And do you know what for? Simply because I'd gone in there 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'd gone out to the shop, and because in Luton it's like, if you leave, that's it. You have to come back in here and start from scratch all over again with the waiting. I weren't doing that with kids in towing suitcases, mate. So I was leaving the kids in there. I'd gone across to the bakery, got them something to eat for breakfast, gone across to the bakery, got something. We was in there all day until 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
The security threatened to throw us out. We actually physically tried to throw me out twice. I always ended up fighting the dude because I was that stressed out and just wanting them to just we just need somewhere to stay, like, and he's stressing me out and threatening to call the police because I've got my kids sitting down in the waiting room eating food. What am I supposed to do? So that was that. They made us wait all day, found us a property right at the end of the day. So it was like, okay, we've got these keys to this place, let's go kids. Only to find out that the flat that they've given us, it was a flat, and it was in smack bang in the heart of Luton's red light.
So it's Hightown Road, yeah? That's when I first met you, okay, yeah. That block, yeah.
And it was like, the whole time there was just like, I cry every night because you imagine I've got to get up 7 o'clock. Me and the kids are out from like 7 in the morning so I can get them to school on time. Their school, we're in Hightown, their school's how many miles away in Lucy Farm. So we're having to leave out 7, get to the bus station, get the bus off to school. We're leaving out in the morning. My children are seeing prostitutes doing business right there in the open. First thing in the morning, like live over their face, and they're looking at me like, Mum, what's that woman doing? Mum, what's that man doing? And like, how do you answer your children? What do you say to your children when you're seeing things like that? Like, you don't want them to know anything about that, so you don't really want to answer them, but then at the same time, you don't want your children who are already traumatised enough to feel like, oh, Mum don't care, she's just ignoring me. Like, what do you do? So they were seeing that every day, going to school and coming home from school.
Talking about schools then, so your kids, so Woot and your kids were in the Woot schools or nursery. You go to Cavington, which is near to, it's just south of Luton, right? So my geography's not great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a village almost, but it's central Bedford, it's okay.
Just on the outskirts of Luton kind of thing.
So school-wise, were you able to get the places at all at that time?
So when we went to stay with my sister the first time, because I didn't want the children to like, you know, I just wanted them something. I just wanted them distracted away from the whole situation. So school was the first port of call for me. So I had enrolled them all into the schools where my nephews were, and they'd got places. At the time, my sister was actually working in the school as a TA, so that helped. So the children all got places in there, and that was in Lucy Farm. So I kept them in that school, even though we'd moved. But when we got to Caddington, because I thought, you know, we're going to be there for a while, because the landlord did sell it to me like, oh yeah, you can have it long term, whatever you want, blah, blah, blah. So I registered them in schools in Caddington because otherwise it's going to cost me way too much travelling to Lucy. Then did I get them back to Southfields? I think I did re-register them back in Southfields after we left Caddington.
So that's Lucy Farm.
Lucy Farm, yeah. So I sent them back to Southfields because I figured, alright, at least if you're in Southfields, wherever we are, I will just bus it to school, because at least then you've got some normality and it's like the same consistency every day. You're seeing the same faces, you're making friends, your cousins are there. So in that respect, I was like, okay, mentally and emotionally, well-being wise, the children will be alright because they're settled in that school, they're familiar.
Did you get help with the school transport?
No, I was refused help with school transport.
Okay, so you just paying
I just paid,
fares?
yeah, I was paying for it myself, so I was paying for bus passes for all of us basically, because my daughter was going, I registered my daughter into the high school. When we was in Caddington, I'd register her into Stockwood, which was just round the corner, but then when we got evicted from there, I registered her into the high school in Lucy, where the others were. So I was paying bus pass for her, bus pass for me, and then bus pass for Ramiel and Ivani, because at the time they were bus pass ages. So that's 4 bus passes every month I was paying for.
And were you working at this?
I was working at care home then. I was working in care in Bedford.
Yeah.
So all my jobs throughout that whole period when I was working, all my jobs were in Bedford. All my employment was in Bedford. So yeah, the kids were still going to Southfields and school in Lucy Farm, and when we was in Hightown they were still going to school in Lucy Farm. Hightown, same thing happened. Temporary accommodation, we were told housing benefit covers the temporary accommodation, but because I was working, it's low income, there's a shortfall. So okay, there's a shortfall, but you lot didn't tell me about the shortfall in the beginning. You told me about the shortfall when you're bloody evicting me. How does that help? So same thing again, housing officer turns up at the door one day, oh, eviction notice. Why? Because you haven't been paying the shortfall. Well, you didn't tell me there was any shortfall to pay. How am I supposed to know? That was that. So they kicked us out of that temporary, so we had nowhere to go again. So my mum, who was living in Barton Clay at the time, said to me, look, just come and stay, look, just have the front room and the sofas until we like can sort something out. So we were staying in Barton, but it meant I still had to get the kids to school in Lucy Farm. So that was just extra costs because buses weren't running at the time because it's village. So it was taxi, drove all the way from Barton to Lucy every day and back. And then my auntie said, you know what, Lee, look, it's costing you too much money. Like, you're basically just pissing out your wages on transport to get the kids to and from school. I'll come and pick you up in the morning, drop you down to the train station to work, and then I'll go back, pick up the kids, drop them to school, and then I'll pick them up at the end of the day. So that's how I avoided got to save a bit of money then. So then we left my mum's around about June 2018, no, 19. Yeah, it was about May, June. And then we went to my auntie's because my auntie she's got a 3-bedroom house, it's her house, and she'd had someone renting out one of the rooms. The person had left, so she was like, look, Lee, I've got 2 bedrooms now. You can have one, the kids can have the other. I'll come and stay until we can find a house for you lot to rent. So that's what we did. So then we was at my auntie's until September 2019, which is when I managed to find a property in Lucy Farm close to the children's schools, and it had the space that we needed. So then, because I was still working, paid the deposit and the rent on that place. Again, the landlord said we could have that as long term, but he, rescinded on that later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we were there from 2019 until 20. When did we move to Northampton? 22.
So I'm trying to remember myself. So you basically were getting a eviction notice from the Lucy Farm property. And I remember so that you gave me a call, and so we approached Bedford Borough Council again.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to remember myself how it all kind of worked out. And I remember initially they tried to say, oh, you haven't got a local connection. And I was like, no, it doesn't matter, it actually does, just where it works. So you went to Northampton, and so you tell the story, because I remember it was in the summer holidays, right, of that year?
That's right.
Yeah.
July 22 is when they moved us from Sparrow Close in Lucy Farm to Northampton. So, and what happened there was it was just a landlord just being nasty, because obviously COVID had happened 2020, and during COVID he decided all of a sudden, I'm not keeping the house no more, I want to sell it during the middle of a pandemic. And he was expecting me to allow people into the house to come and view the house while the whole country was on lockdown. And I kept on, at first, government guidelines were saying it's okay for you to do that, it's okay for you to do that. So he was using that against me, and I was like, okay, I can't do nothing, it's his house. But then I was like, after a couple of visits, I was like, no, I can't do this, because you're risking bringing things into my house. Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and I can't, I've got small children, I can't. So I shut it down, and from I shut it down and stopped people coming in and viewing, he started getting really nasty with me. And then we kind of ended up head to head, like toe to toe kind of thing. And he just went ahead with eviction. But then the first eviction notice that he served me, I contacted Bedford Borough to say to him, look, my landlord served me this notice. I'm feeling like this doesn't look like a legit notice. Bedford come back and said, no, it's not a legit notice.
Was this temporary accommodation, or was it?
No, this was private rent. I was paying for this.
I realise that, okay.
Yeah, well, I was paying for that rent. I paid the deposit on that house, and I was paying for the rent each month. And
why Northampton? Was it because what was the?
I don't know. That was Bedford that done that.
Okay, and so because I remember you were put in Northampton at the beginning or middle of summer holidays.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying to the council do I register my kids' school in Northampton, or what was the?
Yeah.
So at this point you didn't know how long you were going to be there.
No.
Okay.
No, they stuck us in Northampton. I spoke to my housing officer. Her name was That was my housing officer at the time, and I was like, look, what do I do? Like, you've put us in Northampton. I don't know Northampton. Don't know no one up here. Got no nothing. Like, what do? Do I put them in school? Do I keep them here? I don't know. What, are you going to move us from here? What? Put the children in school. Our advice is enroll all the children in school. So I did that. And then, because it was summertime, we didn't quite know what was wrong with the house until the winter time. And that's when all the ugly started showing up. Like, we had slugs. We'd wake up in the morning because, right, we couldn't sleep in the back. Couldn't put the kids in the back bedroom. There's a little box room at the back.
So the damp coming down the wall, was that
there was a bloody hole in the ceiling.
Yeah.
And there was damage to the roof. So when it rained, it was literally just pouring through the hole into the bedroom. And then in that same bedroom, like this house, we had a boiler in there that was like 20 odd plus years old that looked completely dilapidated and like, oh my gosh, it's gonna blow up any minute, in that same bedroom. And it was like, okay, we can't have the kids in it. So we had to, what would have been my room, we had to put the kids in there. And then my 13-year-old, he had the other small bedroom. So it meant I was sleeping downstairs on the sofa. I wake up in the morning and see slug trails going all around the floor in the living room. So my partner at the time, he'd come up and because he was travelling to and from and helping us out because I was pregnant and my hypertension and I'd just been diagnosed with kidney disease. And it was really, really bad. So he was there a lot. He just went around and he plugged everything with carrier bags.
So and just talk me through the timing here. So you gave birth in November
22.
Yeah, and you were in hospital like longer than you were.
Yeah, I was in hospital for 9 days because my blood pressure was really high. It was like way up in the 200s and it wouldn't come down. They were seriously worried. When I was pregnant, they thought I had preeclampsia. Why? My blood pressure was up there so bad. So I was constantly in the hospital. Like, you know, normally when you go for antenatal, you go every week for a checkup, but I was in the hospital like almost every day for checkups and monitoring. And when I did have the baby, it was emergency C-section and he was fine, but I wasn't. So they kept me in for 9-10 days. At which point I completely broke down because I didn't want to go home. And when the midwives questioned me, because I was really in a bad state in the hospital, it was all worry about the kids being in the house with the state it's in, and me having to take a baby back to that house. I was just worried that they were all going to get really, really sick, breathing all of that in. And obviously when you go home, get sent home, midwife comes out with it for 10 days. So when she came out the first day, she was like, oh my God, Leonie. She said, I know, it's not like I didn't disbelieve you, but it's like, you know, to hear it and then to see it is something completely different. But she saw it for herself. We had black mold going up the stairs. The bedroom where we'd had the kids sleeping, it was like we had no choice but to keep them in that room. But then it's like we can't keep them in there because literally the whole room down one side, from like this high all the way down to the floor, was just black mold and damp, and it spread around to the other side and up, and oh my God, it was. And that's where we'd set the cot up. So obviously the baby can't stay in there, the kids can't stay in there, so it ended up like the only decent bedroom was the one at the front that my teenager had. So one had to, there's top and tail in that room, and then the rest of us were all downstairs on the sofa with the baby.
And sorry to jump around a little bit, so because I remember vaguely some stuff around schools in Northampton, so because I know that they wouldn't help you with the school transport when they moved you. Am I jumping ahead a little bit there? Have I gone ahead or have I gone a bit back?
Yeah, that's ahead a little bit, right, because when we was in that first house in Northampton, there was a school just at the end of the road, so we'd enrolled the two little ones into the school, but the youngest didn't get a place, but the older one did. So she was fine, she was in school. And then the teenager, he'd got a place at the local high school just up the road, Kingsthorpe College. So them two were fine in school. He was 5, 6 at the time, didn't have a place. And because for years I've been saying like, look, I suspect he's got some kind of special needs, that like he's displaying traits of autism and ADHD. And from we were evicted from Wotton, I had been trying to get us registered with a doctor wherever we were, and every doctor's surgery, every GP kept on telling me the same thing: sorry miss, you have no fixed abode, so we can't register you. And I'm like, well, what do I do when my kids get sick and like they have health issues? And well, you just have to go to 111 or walk-in centre, blah, blah, blah. That didn't help me, so I couldn't follow up on the concerns with him. So obviously, as you can imagine, over the years, those issues that I noticed with him with regards to the autism and ADHD just got more and more prevalent, and his need became higher and higher. But obviously there's no one to address it, there's no one to help advise or nothing, so I'm just having to manage as best as I can, all while moving him around constantly. So he was out of school. Thankfully, the midwife, when she saw that, she got onto Bedford Borough straight away, and within like 3 weeks, after I'd been banging on at them since July about the state of the house, because regardless of the mould, we didn't notice that until we started to get to winter, but there was other issues in the house that was concerning. They were just, it was either I couldn't get hold of no one or everyone was dismissive. But the midwife and the health visitor got on them, and within a couple of weeks they found us a lovely 4-bedroom house just down the road, another temporary accommodation. So they moved us. I think that was week before Christmas, 22. So, and that's the house that we just moved from.
Yeah, and that's still temporary accommodation.
That's still temporary accommodation.
So before you had to move again, was that potentially the most stable bit of the last 7 years for you and your kids in terms of being?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The last house that we was in Northampton, because surprisingly, like the first house was another like this, ex-HMO.
Yeah.
And from what the neighbours told us around there, it's exactly the same as this. They had grow going on the roof. At one point, the whole ceiling had collapsed in the house, and then the house had just been left empty with the collapsed ceiling for months and months and months, because another landlord didn't want to spend money, but obviously ended up having to do it, patched it up and whatever, and then just slung families in there one after the other. And then in between families, he'd just had it back as an HMO, and then he'd rip them out, fling another family in. So then when they moved us to the second house in Northampton, which surprisingly was another ex-HMO, but this was actually in a lot better condition. It had a cowboy, I call it a cowboy extension because it literally was a cowboy extension they flung up on the back. But other than that, it was actually all right. And again, we've got school outside the front door. My son was still in high school. My daughter was still in school where we were at the other house, so I got her transferred to the school where we were living now, and then I got the little one into school there as well. So everybody was settled and comfortable and quite happy for us to just, go along in that house until we get somewhere permanent. And we're even happy to stay in Northampton because it was, we were comfortable up there. We actually liked it. But then it wasn't a very nice estate. It was like, honestly, it was just like we call them scumbags or knees, but they controlled the estate, basically, had free run of the estate. They were all over the place. And that's where, because I had the kid's dad back and forth help me, he got sucked back in. And he'd been doing really well up until then, like 2 years. Like, he'd been doing brilliantly, but obviously wasn't strong enough, got sucked back in, relapsed. So there was a lot of arguments, a lot of domestic abuse in the house, and the police would just turn up, take him out the house, keep him in the cells for the morning, for the night, and then turn up back again in the morning with him at my front door. At one point, because I put his stuff out, they turned up with him at the door the following morning and were threatening to arrest me. And I'm saying, mate, I'm in my pyjamas, kids are still in bed, like it's early morning. I'm like, mate, what are you talking about? Well, it is an offence. What does it say? It's a crime, an act of criminality that I've dumped his stuff out on the street. I was like, mate, he's abusive. He's abused me. This is why you came here last night, to remove him. So I put his stuff out so you don't have to come back here. Oh, well, you need to go and find his stuff because it's not where you said it is. They made me leave my kids in the house on their own, asleep, and they stayed outside by their car with him, and another officer took me in my pyjamas, made me come out of my house in my pyjamas at flipping 7:45 in the morning and walk the streets of Eastfield looking for this man who had just assaulted me the night before, looking for his belongings. And then after that, But I couldn't get rid of him. And there was no one to help me get rid of him. And when I finally did get rid of him, it was because thankfully my brother had come to visit the night before. The following morning, I was really tired because I'd been up all night. My daughter had been throwing up all through the night. The baby had been really unsettled all through the night, and I was shattered. So 7 o'clock in the morning, the baby's crying again after he'd just been gone down for an hour ago. I was absolutely exhausted. His dad's laying there pretending that, you know, he can't hear nothing, can't hear the baby crying. So I had to go at him about it. Like, mate, I've been up all night. You get up and deal with him, just let me sleep for an hour. So he started arguing with me, and in the proceeds thought, okay, he'd get right up in my face, and then that's when he started attacking me, and he had me pinned in the bed, strangling me while I've got the baby in my arms. My brother heard me shouting at him from downstairs, run upstairs, pushed him off me, then he flew at my brother, and my brother's that kind of, he knows his temper, so he's like, he's not going to, no, you're not getting me there, and he let go of him. He was like, mate, I'm not doing it. Then he picked up the phone and called the police. Police come, they didn't even take him out of my house. They kept him in the other room. And I could hear the police officer saying, yeah mate, I see what you mean, like, can't get a word in edgeways, she don't shut up, does she? This is the police saying this to the man that just assaulted me. Like, literally. And then so I got really annoyed, and I got in there and I said to him, mate, like, let me just stop you right there. How are you coming in my house to arrest someone that's just assaulted me, and you're agreeing with him? Yeah, I said, I'm not having it, I'm not having it. Oh, he was so condescending. He grabbed me by the arm, put one hand on the shoulder, and was walking me out of my own kitchen, telling me, I think we need to, why don't we just go and sit down and have 5 minutes and calm down? And I shrugged him off. I was like, no mate, you're not patronising me. You need to get him out of my house because he's assaulted me, and that's why you're here, not to patronise me and condescend me and agree with him. That's when they was like, the other officer, woman officer, looked at him and kind of like give him a nod. That's when they took him out of the house. And then he come back in and was like, okay, while my colleague's out there, can I take a statement? Yes, you can. Do you want to press charges? Yes, I do. Give him the statement. I said to him, what's going to happen now? Right, so we're going to go back. My sergeant will probably interrogate him, and then he'll more than likely be released on bail. Can we bail him back here? I'm sorry, mate. He's just attacked me. Why do I want him back here? Okay, that's fine. Went away. Called me back later on that afternoon. Now bearing in mind this is the morning. Called me back later on that afternoon. Right, so sergeant's interrogated him now, and the sergeant's decided that, you know, he's still making a decision what to do. Can we bail him to your house? Mate, I told you this morning, no. Why would I want someone back in my house that's assaulted me? Arrest him, keep him in the cells, I don't care what you do, but he's not coming back here. Then they called me back, like, an hour or two later, just to say, well, the sergeant's finished his interrogation now, and he's decided not to go ahead and press charges, and has released him back out into the general public. But hold on a minute, I want to press charges. I have a witness here who you've not even taken a witness statement from. That was that. When I questioned the police about it later on, because there was, going forward, there was other times, because he kept on coming back to the house. So after that day, that's the day I got him out, and he couldn't come back in. After that day, from that day, he was outside my door every night.
Did the police refer you to the IDFA? When did you get an IDFA in Northampton to resolve this? Any of the support?
Not until later on.
Right, okay. So he's turning up every night outside the TA address?
Yeah. Every night, and he'd be out there from like, as soon as it got dark, basically, and he'd be at the front door, banging at the front door, shouting through the letterbox, threatening me. He broke the glass in, he broke the front window, banging on the door. He'd try and rip open, because the back door was really, you could see someone had broken in previously, like, so it was damaged. He'd try and pull at the back door to get in, because the kitchen was an extension, the cowboy extension. He'd climb up on the roof of that, and my bedroom was right above that. So if my window was open, he'd climb through the window, like, so I took to just keeping all the windows closed at night time. And that's what he'd come at the door. He'd be threatening at the door every night, shouting through the letterbox, you know, I can get in here, watch, you'll wake up and you'll just find me standing over you in the middle of the night. That's what I was going through every night. He was above my son, below my son's bedroom, the littlest one, the 7-year-old. He had like a, you know, the little roof bit that goes over the front door. He'd climb up on that at night because I'd leave my son's window open a crack because he couldn't sleep with the window closed. He didn't like sleeping with the window closed. He'd climb up there and he'd be trying to get through the window, his face pressed up at the glass, and my boy kept on telling me, like, Mummy, I had a nightmare. What's the nightmare? There was a man's face at my window just looking at me, smiling. And then after talking to him, like, son, like, what's the man's face look like? He was like, he looks like Daddy, Mum, he looks like Daddy. And then it was one night, I got up to go to the toilet, and as I'm walking past my son, my room's here, my son's room's there, I'm walking past, I see this face at his window. It's his flipping dad. And that's when I was like, oh my God, you weren't even dreaming. You're like waking up half asleep to go to the toilet, or because you can hear something, and you're seeing this face at the window. That's what the nightmares you're talking about. So there was all of that. So then he eventually got arrested after all of this going on for flipping months. This was going on for months and months and months. So he finally got arrested, only for them to fine him £100. And then.
So did you go to court and they fined him £100?
Arrested him, took him to court, fined him £100, released him back out. So then he was back at my door again. The day the domestic violence protection order was granted, I remember, was the 9th of February. That same night...
This year now?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That same night, that man was outside in the back garden watching me and the kids through the window. The domestic violence protection order said that he was not allowed to come anywhere within 100 metres of us, wherever we are, or that property. So that same night, he'd been in court, and then granted that order, he was in the back garden. The next day, me and the kids went into town to do some shopping. We were at the bus station waiting for the bus to go home. Here he is, approaching us in the bus station, not caring a world. And I said to him then, I said, you do realise you're in breach of the order? Yeah, I don't care. I was sat in the back garden last night watching you lot. I was like, what? He said, yeah. And he reeled off everything me and the kids were doing and were talking about. So he'd been out there for hours watching us and we didn't even know. So I said to him, well, there's no skin off my nose because you're the one that's going to end up in jail for it, not me. Like, so just leave us alone. He wouldn't leave us alone. He stayed there the whole time we was waiting for the bus. Reported it. The next night, put the kids to bed. We were all in bed settling down for the night. It's like about 11. Me and my big daughter were up. I'm laying in bed. She's laying in her bed. She's like, Mum, was that the back gate? I'm like, yeah, it sounded like it. Looked out the window. It's him out there in the back garden, banging on the back door. He wants to talk to his girl, Now, my 20-year-old, he calls her his daughter. Like, he's been around her from she was a baby. And me and him have been friends. Just a bit of backstory. We've known each other, like, we've been friends for like 30 years plus. So, there was that. So he come and breach again. He's out there flipping 11 o'clock at night, banging the door, shouting, this, that and the other. Called the police come, took him away. Didn't arrest him, just took him away. And I'm saying to the police at the time, because they come in to speak to me and the kids, and I was like, look, this order was served on Friday. He breached it Friday night, he breached it yesterday, and he's breaching it again today. And all you lot are doing is just taking him away. He's breached the order 3 times since the order's been given to him. Surely that deserves him to be slung in a jail cell now. Oh, well, it's for the courts to decide, The courts didn't do anything. Didn't do nothing at all, mate. The day when he strangled me, they arrested him, the courts decided to sentence him to 28 days. And then we got my support worker received an email from the police, I think it was the end of that week or the beginning of the following week, to say he's going to be released on the 14th of March. That was 11 days after he was arrested. So we were all like, what happened to the 28 days? No one can answer us. The police couldn't give me no explanation and the courts couldn't give me no explanation. I just basically had to lump it. And this is why they moved us the way that they, because according to them it was an emergency move because they were worried about the safety of me and the children. So I get that.
How did it get back to Bedford, do you know? Did the police, I'm just trying to work out who would have been involved at this point. Was the IDVA involved at this point? So
IDVA was involved,
okay.
The police were involved. I had, what are they called? Through the school, because obviously with my son and in his high needs and everything, special needs, the school had been putting me in contact with different agencies for help and support for him. And one of them agencies, I think, was part of Children's Services in Northampton called Strengthening Families, and they assigned us a support worker. So her, the IDVA and the police were all involved, and I left all communication between her and them. She was brilliant because she recognised, like, they're taking the piss basically out of you, Leonie, let me handle it, because it seems like I'm getting a response where you're not. So that's how we worked it. She, whatever I had raised or flagged up, she would take it and address whoever the body was, because she was the one getting the responses. So they were all involved up to that point and after.
And so you moved to Coventry. Why Coventry?
Right, so, well, let's call her by her right name. Right? So, who claims that she will be my housing officer when I'm permanent, is actually my rehousing officer. She is the one that I spoke to the night before they moved us, and she called me to say, okay, we've sourced you a property. Okay, where have you sourced? Nottingham. I'm sorry, Nottingham? No. At first I considered it, but then when I looked up where it was and everything, it was like, look, it's miles away from everybody that I need, okay? Then she came back with Peterborough, same thing. Then she came back with Coventry, obviously the third one, innit? I can't say no, can I? And that's how we ended up with Coventry.
Do you know if they looked in Bedford at all, or like Luton or someone?
Right, so this is how we get to Coventry, how the decision was further away. I'd said to them, I don't mind where we're placed as long as I have access to my support network. My support network, which I've made this clear from the very beginning of this whole journey, is all in Bedfordshire. Now claims that the police advised her, Northampton police have advised her, that it's not safe for me and the children to be in Bedford or near to Bedford because, you know, he has connections to Bedford. But my connections are in Bedford too. And I'm sorry, but he's the perpetrator. So why do I give a shit about anything to do with him? I need to make sure that we're safe. And that's what you're supposed to be doing, helping us make sure that we stay safe. So you keep the baddies off the street and you protect the decent people. That's how it's supposed to go. So according to the police advisor, no, we can't be in Bedford because it's unsafe. Which I've spoken to Bedfordshire police and they're like, no. Because if your support network is in Bedfordshire, we're not going to say that it's not safe for you to be in Bedfordshire.
Interesting to see that whatever conversation was held there in terms of what was said and what wasn't said, that will put that on the list of things to...
Yeah, that would be interesting. So that was that, and that's why we were stuck with Coventry. And it was like, I don't know what the council were expecting, because they moved us from Northampton on Thursday the 14th of March, 9 o'clock in the morning. I received a phone call at like 4, 5 something, the 13th, to say, okay, we found this property, no, not doing that. We found, no, not doing that. Have to take the third one. Then they call back at like near on 6 o'clock, okay, so we've arranged a property for you, so you and the children need to get to the property tomorrow. How am I supposed to do that? Yeah, number one, how am I supposed to pack up everything in this house in less than 12 hours and sort out 4 children, get 4 children ready to move? I've got no money, so how am I paying for removals? And how the bloody hell are me and these kids getting to Coventry? Then they came back right after 6. Right, so we arranged removals for you to come and collect your belongings from the property. The removals will be with you 9 o'clock in the morning. And we've paid for a taxi to pick up you and the children at 9:15 in the morning. How is that going to work? Because I need to be here to make sure the stuff gets put on the van and lock up and everything to give you guys the keys, but you've booked the taxi to pick us up at 9:15 to take us to Coventry, but the removal guys are only getting here at 9 o'clock. How was that working? So they weren't happy about that because the taxi driver was belling them off for hours, like, you booked me for this time and they're not ready, da 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 da. He was really, really annoyed, that taxi driver. He was so angry. But what? And we couldn't even take all of our stuff on the van anyway. We just had to fit as much essentials or what we believed we needed as we could onto the van. And that was it. And then we got to the house in Coventry to find out, like, the guy that met us there is like, what, you do know, because we've got dog with us, you can't have dog here. I'm sorry, mate. He's like, no, landlord's terms, no pets. I said, well, do you know what? You go back to the office and you tell them the tenants have got a dog, which they were aware of, and the dog's not going anywhere because the dog's like one of my children. The dog is one of my children. So you go back to your bosses and tell them they're going to have to find us somewhere else now then. So that was that. He left, went to switch on the boiler after the removal guys and he left. No gas, no hot water, the boiler's flashing up errors. What do? Rang them up. Okay, we'll send someone out. Now bearing in mind, they moved us up there. By the time we got to Coventry, it was just after 12, right? I rang them more or less straight away to say, look, what's going on? This boiler's not working. Okay, we'll have an engineer out with you soon. We waited all day and night for someone to come out and deal with that boiler. We had no hot water, we could do no cleaning, couldn't wash, could do nothing. The next morning, and the kids were like absolutely petrified. They were absolutely petrified. The back garden, like you could see into the neighbour's back garden because the whole fence had come down and it was all, you've got this big tree hanging over that looks like it's going to collapse on anyone at any moment. You've got like everything overgrown, but with the overgrown you can see there's potholes and dips and it's like, oh my God, I can't let none of you go out there. And then the front door opens straight out onto a main road, busy main road. Can't let you lot go out there either. We've got windows that are like this low down and lower. Some with safety catches, some without. We've got steps, the first 3 steps going up the stairs. We've all fallen down and up them stairs in them 2 days we was in that house because we've got big chunks, like someone's just smashed chunks out of the steps with a sledgehammer and they didn't fix it, they just put carpet over it. So we're trying to, oh my God.
So you stayed there 2 days and you went back to...
So we moved in there on the 14th, the boiler weren't working. We all, just like I said, right kids, look, we'll just all camp out in one room for the night. So we camped out in that one room. I got up first thing the next morning thinking, right, okay, shot around the corner, run around, get some bits for the kids. The electric's gone. Like, okay, let me go and check. Because I knew it was me, and let me see if the electric's run out. You shouldn't have, because there was money on there last night. Went out, looked in the meter, it's credit on the meter. Where's the electric on then? Check the fuse boxes, fuses are fine. What's going on with the electric? Because it's ex-HMO, you know they've got those lights on the landings, the timer lights.
Yeah.
That's working. Why are none of the other electrics working? Nothing else was working electrically in the house. Picked up my phone to go and to phone them. Got through. The lady said to me, right, I need to take screenshots of the meter, screenshots of the fuse box. I was like, okay. Took a screenshot of the fuse box. Went outside to take a screenshot of the meter. My phone died. Sorry. That was it. Like, my mind was blown then, because now I've got kids waking up, Mum, we're hungry, Mum, we're hungry. And then kids realising, the older ones are realising, hold on a minute, we've got no electric, we've got no hot water. So they're starting to panic. And then because they're starting to panic, the little ones are starting to get stressed. And then before I knew it, I've got a household of children all in tears and just clinging to me. Mum, what we going to do, what we going to do? Mum, we're scared, Mum, we're scared, what we going to do? Like, I didn't know what to do. Like, thankfully my son still had battery power on his phone. And I ran my daughter down there, she's like, Mum, I just got paid. Just get everyone in a taxi and get down here now. And that's what we did. I didn't know what else to do. I don't know anyone in Coventry. And it was just... coming from all of that, it was just... thing about this all is how my children are feeling. Because I can't give them what they need. I can give them all the love, care and attention and affection because I'm their mum. But stability, like home, and they keep saying, Mum, why can't we just go to one school? Why do we have to keep changing schools, Mum? They've gone through one, Wotton, Southfields, Caddington, Northampton, 5 schools, 5 different primary schools my younger ones have gone through. My daughter, she's 20, she's gone through 3 different high schools. She, oh my God, it's only because she's got a good brain on her head, but she didn't even get to like experience her high school years as she should have done because we have to keep moving. She didn't get to settle comfortably and to just bang out her GCSEs like every other teenager because she couldn't. Like, it's ruined all of my children's lives. My bigger ones, like, were forced out to, my daughter, she's my eldest, she had to go and stay in a hostel. All because we were made homeless by the council because they didn't do their job. Not because I didn't do anything wrong, because they didn't. I completely fractured our whole family. Yes, I'm a single mum. Yes, I have a lot of children, but everything about me, my whole existence from being a mum, from the first ever big child, is just 100% dedication to my children and making sure they have the best and everything they need so that they can be successful adults in society. Like, I pride myself in making sure my children are raised with morals and ethics so that they are positive role models in society, so they're not like the stereotypical, you know, we've got this stereotypical image of children that come from single parent families. I have strived, I've done everything to make sure that my children don't fit in that box. Because, you know, at the end of the day, why should they have to fit in that box just because they come from a single parent household? I don't think like that, I don't work like that. So I'm not going to raise my children like that.
When was the last time you were able to work, Leonie?
Right, so
when was the last time you were able to work?
So just as COVID hit, because that's why I had to stop working because of COVID. And then since then, obviously, my health has deteriorated, and I never expected my health to deteriorate the way it has done, but it has really gone downhill badly. So now I'm diagnosed with, whereas the doctor diagnosed me with anxiety and hypertension before, now the hypertension has contributed to chronic kidney disease. So, and I'm not even at the lower end of the scale, I'm at the higher end of the scale.
So that's in part because of the stress, like prolonged stress?
What had happened, what the doctor said to me, this is going back to 2019 when I registered with the doctor in Lucy Farm, and after explaining everything to him, he said to me, yeah, he believes that the anxiety and the hypertension are directly related to our living circumstances, and the fact that when I was pregnant with my 7-year-old, the hospital were concerned about my kidneys back then, because they kept on saying to me that you've got high protein levels and that's not right, so we want to do investigation. But because I was pregnant, they couldn't do investigation. And then after I had the baby, it was just bam bam bam, I'm jumping through these hoops. So my 7-year-old, he was born November 2016.
Yeah.
So at that time when I was pregnant and after I had him, they wanted to do investigations on my kidneys because they could see like your protein levels are too high, there's something going on with your kidneys, we're concerned. But then at that time is when the council was throwing all this at me. So I was back and forwards from court, backwards and forwards from the council and everything. And just that whole medical side of things just didn't get dealt with because I'm having to jump through all these hoops to do all this to try and save this house, to save our home. And then, what the doctors explained was that there was an issue with my kidneys back then, and that's why the protein levels were so high. And then because over the years it was never addressed, it just deteriorated and kept on deteriorating till now I have chronic kidney disease. Where it could have, if it had been picked up back in 2016, 17 when they wanted to, then I may not be diagnosed with, stage 3 going on to stage 4 now, the doctors said. So I might not be there now if that had got dealt with, do you know what I mean? And that didn't get dealt with because I was having to jump through hoops to try and save our home, which didn't make no difference anyway. The only counsellor I can say, there was 2 that I can say responded with any kind of help was the counsellor in Wootton.
Councillor Wheeler, I think.
Yeah, Councillor Wheeler. And then there was what's his name? There was a councillor in Luton, and I think he was Luton South, maybe for Labour. I can't remember what his name was. I've got him in my email somewhere. But they're the only 2 councillors that came back with any kind of positive advice or supportive advice or anything.
And did any of these, like the actual housing officers or like those kind of, anyone working for the council in those kind of settings, did any of them kind of hear you out, or kind of do you feel like you're kind of getting hurt?
No. They were very rude and condescending and dismissive, especially at the time when we were evicted from Wootton, was the person in charge, and she was horrendous. She was absolutely horrendous. After that, I didn't really have a direct housing officer. It was just went through whoever.
Yeah.
There wasn't really anybody. And then again in Luton, they were just as bad. They really were just as bad.
Yeah.
There wasn't anybody other than those two counsellors that were in any way supportive or even helpful.